All right, welcome everyone. My name is Carrie Hopkins-Isles, and I'm the Deputy Director for ICU DDR. And we're so excited today to have a webinar that will not only educate us all, but also is very related to the missions and the goals of ICU DDR, and that it's universities working together internationally. So doing research, applied research in addiction prevention and treatment, engaging addiction professionals in academic programs around the world, and developing a network of universities who are engaged in the design and implementation of academic curricula and programs in addiction prevention and treatment. And so I'm really excited to start with a wonderful, esteemed colleague and friend, Diana Lesme Ramiro, and I will let her take it away.
Thank you, Carrie. Good afternoon, everyone. Really thankful for the opportunity to share this study that is a product, as it was well said by Carrie, of a joint project between our two universities and the universities that got together in the process of doing this research. The University of South Florida, represented by Dr. Roger Peters, and Graciela Barreto, Cecilia Muñoz, and myself from the Universidad Católica Nuestra Señora de la Asunción. And the good thing about it is that we all met in the context of the ICU DDR meeting, so let's celebrate that. So I would like to share you a few ideas. My responsibility today is to give you an introduction to what we did, and how we did it, and then my colleagues will go on into a little more detail. Oops. So just to start with, I would like to introduce a little bit about Paraguay. Many of you are from the international side, may not are familiar with the social reality and some numbers of our country. So I would like to present this song, just to have an idea of where this study comes to stay, to be developed. And this is our map. We're located in the South America, in precisely the heart of South America, I would like to say. It's right in the middle. I will show you later in a map of the Americas where we're located. In terms of population, we have a population a little over 7 million inhabitants. Which is important about that is that 56% of our population is under 30 years old. Pretty even, the distribution of genders. We are 50% male, female, so pretty democratic gender, likewise. In terms of area of residence, Paraguay, according to the projections made for the by the National Center of Statistics, we have an urban population of 63% and a rural population of 37%. Poverty index by 2014 was almost 19%. The Social Security health coverage is about almost 26%, which is an absolute crisis now with the COVID situation. I'll tell you a little bit about that later. Internet access in the whole republic is 22.5. However, almost 97% of the population has a mobile phone, which most likely includes is a smartphone that includes and amplifies the coverage of the internet. And the literacy rate is 94%. And again, we can't talk these days about drug use or substances abuses and problems related without referring to the situation of the pandemic in each one of our countries. And just to give you an idea of how this is going through in our country, according to the official numbers of the Ministry of Health, I went to the December 14th just to give you a sample of what we have in here. We have on December 14, 641 positive cases, all of them community cases. That means they were contagious, they were not identified cases, they were transmitted in the community. 18 deceased, total deceased by December 14 was this number, almost 2,000. 783 were hospitalized. Of those, in intensive care, 160. I have to say, unluckily, this number by yesterday, December 15, rose rapidly to 174. And this is to say that we are getting very, very full in the services and almost no available intensive care for this circumstance. And total confirmed cases by December 14, we have 94,000 of cases in the country. And going into our topics specifically, we have to say that the problem of drug use in Paraguay, we deal with this problem. We have a scarcity of systematic statistical data in general population to monitor directions in which the problem progresses. There are some studies, but not very frequently, and there are in specific populations, so target populations. But however, those somehow reveal some trends. That's why this study that we did jointly with the USF is very important, because it will show and will bring up data that is today not available in the country about a specific sector we have to do with female incarcerated. Just to have an idea of what are the drugs that are have highest prevalence in our country, alcohol is among the listed substances, and marijuana among the illicit drugs. That was a study made in the student population in 2014. And type of drugs that often motivate the demand for treatment in treatment centers in 2012 was in the first place crack and then alcohol among the legal drugs. And another important data, according to what it has been said of our population, is that the highest prevalence of use of substances in general is among people between 15 and 39 years old. This is, remember we said 56% of population is under 30, so we do have a lot to do there. It's a big challenge for us. And this is about specifically our proposal, our project. We call it this webinar, Risk Level of Substance Use in Incarcerated Women. And it was done with two universities, University of South Florida, right here, and our university in Paraguay, right here in the middle of South America, Universidad Católica Nuestra Señora de la Asunción. It was mainly developed during 2019, thanks to an initiative of the University of South Florida. What do we think? How do we start doing this? Start thinking this problem. We start thinking about what a prison meant for women. We pretty soon saw, and according to the experiences that some members of the team had, we came to the conclusion that it's a discriminatory and abusive place that generates stigma and pain, not only to the women incarcerated, but also has an important impact on family. Many families are single mothers, and there are the ones who lead the families, and in community. We found out that 79% of the inmates of Buen Pastor, which is one of the women's prisons, are in prison for causes related to drug trafficking. Also, that 20% of those inmates consume some type of narcotic, and the fact that in prisons there are no treatment or no ways of screening tools applied until now that we did it. So that's why we thought it was important to do that. And we consider three aspects in this project, this joint project. One was the first one's an exchange project for university teaching researchers. Two, training of curriculum 5, specifically of the Colombo Plan, the Universal Treatment Curriculum, regarding topics of admission, screening, evaluation, treatment planning, and documentation. And the third component was the screening for the risk of consumption and brief intervention in women drug use in prison. We did it using the ASSIST screening tool. I have a little sample here of the first page. It's a tool designed by the World Health Organization, and it's Spanish version. And we work in 2 prisons, female prisons in Paraguay. One Pastor, which is located in Asunción, the capital city, and the other one in the prison of San Juan, which is in Misiones, in another city. Why this study is important? Because we'll describe a process to identify whether women in prison and visitor prison are at risk of having a disease or disorder due to drug use, to find whether there is a problem with use of psychoactive substances, and if there is a need of a more in-depth evaluation. Also enable training of prison workers in using the ASSIST tool, which we said before, nothing has been done in that sense in the prisons in Paraguay. Show the reality of the very frequently denied and untreated reality on the substance abuse field, which has to do with female and incarcerated. Develop with the results of the screening therapeutic activities based on evidence and allowing the early recognition of a possible consumption problem of drugs, which again will allow an intervention before symptoms of dependency or very bad damage appears. And also, and this is part of the contribution of our universities to the knowledge, to the state of knowledge, state of art, we say, develop the first consumption risk map in 2 of the women's prisons in the Republic of Paraguay. So this is how we did it. It's a little bit of, I will tell you a little bit about the process and how we did it. Well, we went through a lot of steps. We've been working for almost 2 years now. And of course, much of the time was cut because of the pandemic. We were supposed to do some activities this year that couldn't be done. We formed the research team at each one of our universities. We did a lot of planning and studying about the situation of women in prisons and drug use and abuse. We prepared and presented a proposal to the USF. We trained prison operators in using the instrument. They applied the instruments in 2 penitentiary centers. Then we count on the help of university students from the Universidad Católica for our 3 classes, and they load the data collected. We, as a class project, was the help of the volunteer students. Then we did analysis, comparison of the preliminary results, which were presented by Professors Graciela Barreto and Cecilia Muñoz of the Catholic University to University of South Florida, which they presented preliminary results of the study in February this year. They did it just on time before the pandemic because we planned to have the other visit, which was planned, Roger Peters to the Catholic University in April this year, which of course it just had to be postponed because of the pandemic, the emergency situation, health emergency situation in the world. But we didn't give up, and we're going to have, we're planning to have Roger Peters in Paraguay for this visit in June 2021. And there will be more discussions and forums and webinars in that occasion, which of course we're going to share with all of you so that we can make this reflection of the topic together. And finally, we're doing now in December the presentation of the webinar with some conclusions. And with that, having said that, I have to turn it over to my colleague, Roger Peters, who will go on more specifics about the study. Thank you.
Thanks, Tia. And let's see, I'm going to share my screen. Is it possible to see the screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Deanna. That's a great introduction. And it's my honor to present during the webinar with my esteemed colleagues from Universidad Católica in Asunción. And again, it's been a very interesting project, and one that's much needed, I think, in many countries to explore just what the need is for substance abuse treatment in the justice system, particularly in prisons. So what I'd like to do is to start out by talking a little bit, very quickly, about the scope of substance use problems globally, with a specific focus on gender differences. And then let's look at screening and identification for substance disorders in prison settings. So let me start with just looking at gender differences across the different countries for men and women. You can see here that men are about twice as likely to use drugs throughout the world. However, men are 4 times as likely as women to be involved in treatment. And there are many reasons for this, I believe. Let me just stop and see if we can mute the microphones of others on the call. Thank you. I think one of the reasons for the difference in the gender gap in treatment is that perhaps there's more lack of detection among women than men. I think that there's a significant stigma among women, and perhaps a reluctance to disclose their substance use disorders among women and family members as well, right? A stigma for entering treatment and admitting to have a substance abuse problem. And then, of course, as we know, and we'll talk about later in the webinar, there's very few treatment programs for women in many settings, including the justice system. So again, just a little bit of a glimpse of the global issues. So what about specific types of substance use disorders? And here we find very high rates of substance use disorders throughout the world. About 1 in 4 people that use drugs have a substance use disorder that rises to the level of needing some type of intervention. The rates of these disorders are about twice as high for men as compared with women across various different types of substance use disorders, as you can see here, except for opiates and heroin, in which women are closer to men in terms of the prevalence rates. But overall, the most common global substance use disorders, as you can see, are alcohol, cannabis, and opiates. And I think this mirrors the problems in Paraguay, as Deanna mentioned, of alcohol and cannabis being perhaps the 2 most common problems, and I know cocaine as well. But let me just mention that there is wide variability across different countries in terms of which drugs are available and which drugs cause the most problems for people and lead to substance use disorders. For example, in some countries, opiates and heroin is not a problem at all. In other countries, that's the major problem of abuse, as it seems to be right now in the United States with synthetic opiates, for example. So with that in mind, there's wide differences in the rates of these disorders, remembering then that women have about half the rate of substance use disorders as men, but very high rates overall. Let's move on to prison settings. And here is the focus of our study between the 2 universities and taking place in Paraguay. And we see the percentage of women in prisons. To begin with, let me just mention that that number has increased globally. So the percentage of women, the proportion of women in prisons around the world, in different countries, has increased in large part due to increases in drug use and drug-related crime among women. So as Dr. Lesme noted in reference to female prisoners in Paraguay, she mentioned that almost 80% were incarcerated due to drug-related offenses. And we find here that women, in fact, across the globe, are much more likely to be arrested and incarcerated for drug-related offenses, almost twice as likely as men to be arrested for drug-related offenses. And so I think this highlights, doesn't it, the need to identify and treat substance use disorders among female prisoners. And of course, let me mention that it's not just drug-related offenses in which people are using drugs and alcohol that are related to the crimes. It could be other property offenses, violent offenses that are related to drug use. It's not just drug trafficking, drug possession types of offenses. All right, before we move on, again, this highlights the need to screen and identify women in prison settings. We also know, as we'll talk about later, there's a huge gap in providing treatment for substance use services in prison, generally, and particularly among female prisoners. And so in the United States, I'll just give the example here where I live, that we have less than 10% of individuals who need treatment in prisons who are actually receiving any type of drug treatment services in that setting. So just a preview of things to come. So let me talk about the rates of substance use disorders among female prisoners. And I'm going to start out, we know again that persons arrested and placed in prison are at high risk for a wide range of different disorders, including substance use disorders, which are pictured here, but also mental disorders, chronic health disorders such as AIDS, HIV, diabetes, heart conditions, hypertension, other types of disorders as well. So here are pictured the rates of substance use disorders among female prisoners, specifically in the U.S. And you can see that there are very high rates. 70% of women in U.S. prisons have a diagnosable substance dependence disorder. And so here you can see the breakdown according to different types of disorders. The highest rates are in U.S. prisons are for alcohol, cocaine, and we'll see in the next slide, stimulants as well, with lesser degrees of people with cannabis dependence, marijuana dependence, and with opiate dependence, although that number is growing. I just want to mention that, again, there's a wide range of findings across different studies in terms of the rates of substance use disorders among female prisoners. For alcohol use disorders, these range from 10 to 30%. 10 to 30% of female prisoners tend to have alcohol use disorders, whereas 30 to 60% of female prisoners have a drug use disorder among those that are captured here. So having said that, looking at the prevalence rates among female prisoners, let me just wrap up my comments by talking a little bit about the importance of screening and assessment, and then we'll turn it over to the other presenters on the panel. So as Dr. Lesme mentioned, we have a high rate of behavioral health disorders in prison populations, which leads to the need for increased screening and identification of these populations in our prison settings. We know that people that have undetected disorders are likely to cycle through prison and other justice settings because there's a close connection between substance abuse and crime, right? So if we don't catch these people early and have them receive treatment, we're not going to prevent future incarcerations, which is incredibly expensive. So having early identification and screening, such as the ASSIST instrument that's being implemented in the research study in Paraguay, allows for treatment planning and placing people in appropriate treatment services quickly so that they don't languish in prison and don't get worse and don't return to the prison system. And we know that when you have a comprehensive system of screening and assessment for substance use disorders, we have better outcomes in our justice programs. So there are various different types of screening approaches, and I think all of us on the panel would endorse the use of a universal system-wide screening for different types of disorders, not just substance use disorders, but also mental disorders as well, because of the high rates of these disorders. I won't go into detail about that, but we know that there are incredibly high rates of mental disorders. In the green bars, you'll see the rates for females in jails and prisons in the U.S. And I know this is true in other countries as well. So again, trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder is one example of a mental disorder that's very common among female prisoners that also needs to be screened for. And with these type of disorders, these mental disorders, we have very high rates of co-occurring substance use disorders. So again, these kind of occur in combination. And finally, my last slide here and my last point is that we want to implement screening and assessment, not just in prisons, as the study indicates that we're talking about today, but also at different other points or intercepts, we call them, in the justice system, including law enforcement, initial detention, and contact with the courts. And then finally, in the community, after prison and reentry services, we also need screening in community-based settings, such as probation, other types of community supervision. So very good. I hope this is helpful, and I'd like to then end my presentation and turn it over to our other two additional presenters to talk about the results from the study in Paraguay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just moving the presenter privileges over to Ceci. So, Ceci, are you able to share your screen? Yay. Thank you. We're not able to hear you yet. You are on mute.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Sorry about that. So the presenter right now is Graciela Barreto, and she's been having some issues with the platform, so I'm going to call her and see if she can actually, if we can actually hear her inputs on this topic, at least through audio. Would that be okay?
Let's give it a shot. I do see her on here now. I didn't earlier.
Yes, she's not finding how to activate her microphone. So I'm going to give her a call. So can you tell me if you can hear Graciela? She's on the phone right now. Graciela, say hello or something. Can you hear her?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll be translating. Graciela doesn't speak very much English, so I'll be translating what she provides to this presentation. Graciela, adelante.
Okay. Muchas gracias. Buenas tardes. Una pena que no pueda estar ahí súper porque algo pasó con internet.
So, hello, good afternoon. I'm very sorry that I cannot join you through WebEx, but I've had an issue with the internet.
Okay. Haremos lo posible para que todo salga muy bien desde el corazón de América del Sur.
We'll do our best to have a very good presentation from Paraguay, the heart of Latin America.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I think it's very little. Sorry. I will have a presentation in English. Thanks to my colleague who will help me with simultaneous translation. Thank you, Cecilia.
It's okay.
Espero haberlo dicho bien, pero en realidad gracias por la traducción.
Dale.
Y disculpas.
No sé si estás pudiendo ver la presentación.
Sí, yo puedo.
Ok, empecemos nomás.
Sí.
Okay. Entonces, en la primera lámina tiene que ver con el hecho de que a
So it's been a few years already that we've been working about the profile and demographic data of women incarcerated due to drug-related crimes. So it's an ongoing topic. Sí, gracias.
En esta oportunidad, cuando hicimos la siguiente, en el número 1, la necesidad local era muy importante, y es lo muy importante de conocer cuál es el riesgo que las mujeres ya consumo de drogas en nuestras casas.
Yeah, so from the starting point, number 1 here, we really needed to know what is the consumption risk that incarcerated women have here in Paraguay.
En el 2015 se ofreció desde la Procuraduría la posibilidad de traer un programa del caso de Paraguay, en donde se pudo gestionar, se trajo el programa para capacitación de profesores universitarios. Fue una gestión local, se trajo un programa para capacitar a profesores universitarios en consejería nacional.
So, starting from 2015, there was this meeting where we were introduced to the Colombo Plan, and very early on there was some interest in bringing that program to Paraguay. And through several conversations and alliances, we were able to train professors and other university students on how to use this, and it was a local initiative and an institutional management.
Y el punto de partida de la investigación tiene que ver como docentes universitarios en el currículum 5 del campo de psicólogos de la capacitación. Encontramos toda la unidad de aprendizaje para el riesgo de consumo de drogas y ahí se inicia esta.
Yeah, the idea to perform this research in itself was motivated through people that were actually trained in this program, and based on the curriculum 5, where we found the screening training, we decided to start from there in order to do this research, and that is how we find ourselves today presenting you this data.
La propuesta viene de la directora de la carrera, de procurar hacer una investigación en materia de drogas, y entonces aquí fue el tema de la fusión entre hagámoslo con las mujeres en prisión.
So this proposal actually comes from Diana, who at that time was working as director of the department. And this is how we started thinking about how to do this, and we decided to work with incarcerated women and present this assessment tool, this printing tool. So this is how we began the research that has this structure that I'm going to present right now. So we start with incarcerated women, that was the population. The focal point was the Center for Penitentiary Studies. As mentioned previously, these were the prisons that were included in this research, both del Buen Pastor and San Juan Misiones. So, and as you can see, the research team is quite large and includes university students, counseling students, university professors, and these connections that we have internationally.
cuanto a la población en prisión, 60% están, bueno, puedes leer eso.
Okay, so as you can see in this slide, this is just for you to have an idea of what the prison system is here in Paraguay. We have 15 penitentiaries, 21 correctional institutions. Over 60% are prosecuted and only 40% have a sentence. Out of all of that number, only 3 of these institutions are exclusive for women, and we have 4 institutions that allow mixed inmates here in Paraguay. And the most common crimes have to do with drug trafficking, unfortunately, and then it's followed by robbery, family violence, murder, and kidnapping.
Que en el 2019 eran un total de 15.544 personas privadas de libertad.
So in 2019, there was a total of 2,000. ¿Me podrías repetir el número?
15.544.
Okay. A little over 15,500 people incarcerated.
Y con la pandemia bajó un 11% en este año, comparado más o menos en esta más, que es 13.920.
So compared to last year, around this same time, the incarcerated number actually dropped 11%. So today we have 13,900 people, a little bit over that.
Y actualmente son 919 mujeres en situación de prisión en Paraguay.
And specifically about women, we have a little bit over 900 women incarcerated today here in Paraguay.
400 de ellas actualmente.
400 of them currently in Del Buen Pastor, which is one of the prisons that we worked with.
Que se encuentran cerrados actualmente.
¿En qué sentido?
Con la pandemia. No pueden ingresar más.
Okay. Okay. And that prison is actually closed at the moment due to the COVID, and that means that no other people can actually go in through this to that penitentiary. Yeah.
Y las mujeres van a las comisarías, no sé cómo algo de.
And so most women that are going through a process, they actually just stay in jail and not go all the way to prison.
Bueno, este tiene que ver más con el tema de por qué está en el medio. Y sería bueno solamente resaltar si poderito esto que me dice ahora.
So this slide contains a little bit of information of why people end up in jail and also in prison, and also to give a view on how this experience in prison is for these people.
Primer delito tiene que ver con el tema de la ley 340, que es el tema del tráfico de drogas.
So the first and most common crime, as I said before, is related to drug trafficking.
En el segundo, violencia intrafamiliar.
Then we have family violence,
Robo,
theft,
asesinato,
murder, and kidnapping, like I said.
En el siguiente, hay consumo de drogas en todas las penitenciarías, consumo de drogas también, digamos, en todas las penitenciarías y por supuesto para mujeres.
Yeah. So in every single one of those prisons that we mentioned before, there is drug consumption, and that is no different for women's prisons.
Durante la pandemia se seguían causando drogas en la prisión.
And even during the COVID and the lockdown, police were still finding drugs within prisons.
Por más de que se cerraron las visitas de los familiares,
even if they were not getting any visits, they could still have drugs inside. Yeah.
Evidenció que también funcionarios podían tener una red de entrega de drogas.
So this actually showed that it's not only the family members that were bringing drugs, but there's also a whole net between within prison workers that were the ones that bringing the drugs inside.
Okay, en el siguiente, el anterior tenía mucho que ver solamente con decirte que la mujer tiene mucho más impacto cuando entra en la cárcel sin la familia.
So what this previous slide shows is the kind of impact that has when a woman is incarcerated and the type of repercussions it has within the family.
Y en Paraguay tenemos una peculiaridad que tiene que ver con el tema de que mujeres en prisión embarazadas y sus hijos pueden vivir en prisión, estos niños pueden vivir con sus madres hasta los 2 años.
So we have this peculiar situation here where pregnant women and women with children up to 2 years, they can actually live with their kids within prison.
A estos niños se les llaman hijos de la cárcel.
And the name that these kids are usually known as, they are sons of prison, sons of jail.
Eso también forma parte de mi estudio, algunas veces estamos dispuestas a utilizar esta.
¿En qué sentido?
Que formaron parte también de la población.
Oh, okay. So pregnant women and women with kids were also part of the population that went through this research.
El instrumento utilizado fue así.
The screening tool was the assist. And so what we did for screening is try to identify who of these women in this case were at risk of having a disease or a disorder related to their use of drugs. And it was a short procedure and techniques that were very easy to apply, but that provide very rich information. And with this, we have like a more in-depth knowledge, and that allows us to have a clearer evaluation of the situation.
El levantamiento de datos fue clave en la capacitación penitenciaria con su trabajo de extensión de universitarios que hacen de voluntariado en las prisiones.
So this was very important that we worked with universities, but with their programs, and also that we were able to work with penitentiary institutes where they actually train their prison workers.
Y los directores de prisión, tanto del Buen Pastor como de la sección de Misiones, estuvieron acompañando muy cercanamente este trabajo porque es la primera vez que se mete un instrumento de esta para medir riesgo de consumo.
And so because this was the first time that this kind of instrument and tool is brought within prison, directors from both institutions were following every step very, very closely.
Entonces, en el siguiente, los datos de tamizaje del consumo de drogas se van a estudiar a los.
Yes. So now we follow showing you what data we collected and how is this distributed between prisons and, well, we're going to see in a little bit. Graciela, te dejo por acá. ¿Puedes seguir escuchando en Webex? ¿Sí? Dale, chao, chao. So now we say goodbye to Graciela. She says, thank you very much. And I'm going to follow from here. I'm going to carry on from here. And so my name is Cecilia, as you might read down there. I also took part of this project, and I actually worked with crunching the data and getting this information out. And so what we have here is that we were fairly close to 200 participants in this research. 24 of them were from San Juan Bautista, and 172 were from Buen Pastor. The ages are very close to each other, 16 to 58 in San Juan, and 18 to 74 in Buen Pastor. And overall, this is the distribution. We had a larger population in Buen Pastor because it is one of the, it's not the largest prison in terms of their capacity, but it's actually overcrowded. So that is why we have a larger population there. And let me go straight to the smaller one, the smaller sample. In this area, we had only 2 participants that were consuming, that had a history of consuming up to 7 different types of drugs. And also we had 22 of them that indicated that they have used at some point of their lives a drug that was injected, yeah. And there's only 1 inmate that didn't disclose consumption of any type of drug. It was a 56-year-old woman. And so we had consumption from all of the options that were provided. However, though, we had a situation of the type of severity, the type of intervention that they might need. And in that regard, we have that in terms of stimulants, although there is a consumption, none of them has it in a way that they require any type of intervention. And the same goes for opioids. We do have in this population 1 25-year-old woman that needs intervention, and is in desperate need of intervention due to the consumption of 4 types of drugs: tobacco, cannabis, cocaine, and sedatives. And we had another woman, 24-year-old, that needs intervention, treatment actually, regarding cannabis and cocaine. And in terms of the frequency, we have that the most used drug is actually tobacco, 79%, and it's followed by cocaine, 50%, and cannabis, 46% of the whole population actually takes this type of drug. We have to remember, though, that as Diana said, there are some legal drugs in this situation, and tobacco is one of those. And here in Paraguay, we have a very low tax regarding tobacco, so it's very, very cheap to obtain either in the streets and also in prison. So just for you to keep that in mind. So in terms of the type of drug that is being used, as we can see, the largest portion goes to alcohol, which is quite interesting, but then not so much once you get to know the situation here. People get very creative when it comes to making their own alcohol within prison. So their families might bring them a pineapple or some sort of fruit like that, and they can actually create and make their own alcohol within the institution. The next one is tobacco, with a 22% consumption. And within San Juan Bautista, there are no consumptions in terms of opioids. So that is at least one less problem in this area, right? Then it's followed by cannabis and cocaine and sedatives. Then when we think about combinations, about if they are consuming or have consumed at some point more than one kind, we actually have a large percentage of people that have declared that they have experienced between 5 to 7 different types of drugs. And this doesn't necessarily mean that they are currently doing within the prison system. However, though, it does mean that there's a tendency to try and search for experiences related to drug consumption. When it comes to tobacco, I'm going to showcase right now the distribution regarding each type of drug. Yeah. So in terms of tobacco, that is the most consumed drug within prison, and up to 52%. And then again, this shows that, and also it shows that there's a need of a brief intervention. Yeah. But however, we still have a large percentage of people that need intensive treatment. So there's a dependency there that needs to be looked after. Regarding alcohol, although there is a consumption, or there has been, they do not require interventions. Yeah. And then regarding cannabis, we have a usage that seems very regulated. However, they're still using this drug, and they do not require intervention. But there is a percentage of people that could use a treatment regarding the consumption of this drug. And in that sense, there's only 2 people. However, there is 2 people that need treatment about this drug consumption. In terms of cocaine, the overall experience is there's no need for intervention. Then again, we have 7 people that have showed, based on the assist results, that they could use intensive treatment because they have said that they are concerned about how much they're using, and they have used it in the last 3 months. And so we need to show an intention to bring them the treatment that they need. So in terms of inhalants, we have 96% of no intervention. There is actually very little consumption in this type of drugs. And the same goes for sedatives, with 74% of inmates not needing an intervention. But there are 22 that do need brief intervention. And then in terms of there's Graciela. In terms of hallucinogens, 96% do not require intervention. Yeah. So we're going to Buen Pastor. You can read here how things are going. Cannabis is most popular among 30 years old, whilst cocaine is the most popular drug between inmates that are under 40 years old. And then again, tobacco has a very prevalent presence, and it's followed by alcohol and sedatives. And I'm going to speed up here because I know that we are right on time, but I want to show you what we found. So their distribution here is quite fair between tobacco and alcohol. And let's keep in mind that over here we screen 172 inmates. So these percentages, although smaller, they do represent a larger population. When thinking about drug combination, we have 3 to 4 drugs combined, and they're in their experience of using it. And in terms of tobacco, here in Buen Pastor, there is a large number of people that need brief intervention. In terms of alcohol, there is a larger number of people that don't need intervention, but still 5%, that is 96 people, 7 people that do need intensive treatment. In terms of cannabis, we have a relatively close situation. In terms of cocaine, 66% of the population don't actually need an intervention. However, 8 women are in need of intensive treatment. Stimulants, it's a very, very low consumption, whether in history or in the present. The same goes for this type of drug. And then in terms of sedatives, again, we need intervention for 5 women incarcerated. And so this is the situation with opioids and the other type of drugs. I'm sorry, I'm speeding up a little bit, but I think you can watch this in YouTube. You can rewind it. And just to go and close this chapter, through this process, we've been able to actually make visible something that we could only seek to, we were all guessing that this was a situation, but with this data, we can actually request that there is a need for local intervention within the institutions, because there are people that are actually suffering for whether withdrawal or with their history of consumption. We can actually make this demand with results, with data, that this can actually make the request come with more power, with more impact. And it's also shown that there is capacity installed within prison workers that can carry out this type of screening very easily, very fast. There's no so much time taking, but it can provide a lot of information in order to determine what would be the next steps regarding this issue that, as we said, is not only a problem here, in the streets, but there's a larger problem within these institutions. And thank you very much for your attention. I know I went very fast with this area, but I was trying to leave a few moments for questions if there are any.
Yes, thank you so much. That's what I was going to say, is we want to allow, if any of our participants have questions or comments for your esteemed presenters, you can unmute yourself and share a question or comment. Oh, we can see you now, Graciela.
Hola, Kimberly. Hi, Kimberly.
It's actually Carrie. I'm just stealing Kimberly's name for today, but hello.
Tanto tiempo. Hello.
Okay. Does anyone have any?
Oh, I just wanted to add. Yeah, while we wait for the questions to show up, there's still a lot of things to do. There's still a lot of work to do. We were actually thinking about, through the visit that we had in January, February last year. Well, no, that was this year. My God, seems like ages ago. We come across some manuals that we're looking forward to translating them and actually bring that as well as a part of what we can offer to the prison workers and to this whole institution, so that changes can be made actually, and not just have interesting data.
Puedo aportar algunas cosas también como aporte de la investigación para la parte de prisiones.
Yeah, go ahead. Sí, Graciela.
Okay. Como resultado de este trabajo, lo que queremos meter por el Instituto de Capacitación de Profesionales en Prisión es meter como un documento para medir los riesgos de consumo y la oportunidad de que puedan tener intervención breve, capacitando a los psicólogos de las prisiones.
So as part of this these ongoing decisions that we are trying to make, Graciela is saying that we are trying to work with the institute that trains prison workers and psychologists that work in prisons, so that they have the tools to provide these brief interventions when needed, and as part of the results of taking the assist. So that would be like the next step for this project.
Actualmente no se tiene una herramienta de tamizaje incorporada a la ficha de las mujeres en prisión, de los varones tampoco. Y esta investigación le está dando esa herramienta al equipo de salud mental de las prisiones.
So by having this screening tool, we can actually add this information into inmates' records and to show their progress and what type of services they might need later on.
Y las fichas dicen actualmente dicen consume drogas, sí, no, y abajo dice manifiesta que consume tal sustancia. No se mide riesgo, no hay otro tipo de tamizaje ni tampoco tamizaje clínico, salvo que ya se pida en la fiscalía para un juicio específico.
So currently what their records show is whether they use or don't use any type of drug. They don't actually have information of their severity of their usage, and that is only requested when they are going to further steps within the judicial system. Creo que querían esperar a preguntas del público.
Y entonces, termino con esto. Y en 8 minutos se dieron cuenta de que pueden tener un instrumento de tamizaje muy válido para sus prácticas diarias en prisión.
So through their experience by using this tool, they were able to learn that within under 8 minutes, they can actually have all this information and know what other decisions to make and steps to take on how to take care of the inmate.
Eso.
Okay, well, since we are past the hour, about 10 minutes past, and there don't seem to be any questions, you guys must have been just amazingly thorough, that no one has questions at the moment. I'm going to wrap it up and thank you so much to our amazing presenters, and I really appreciate all of your time and your expertise and look forward to hearing more about this work as well. And thank you. I will be sending you all the links, so you'll be able to have this recording for, as you said, Cece, if we went fast or if there's something you want to go back to, you'll be able to have that opportunity.
Yes, and I think that you have our contact information within the group, so we are available if anybody wants to keep this conversation going.
Right. Thank you everyone for sharing this space with us. Bye-bye.
Care all.
Ciao.
Gracias por